we can always talk the state championship teams and the teams that made it to the state tournament, but I think we also got to talk a little bit about, I guess, what I'm calling them, or what we call them, the gap years. Maybe the first 4 years, first 4 or 5 seasons up to 75 when you guys made it to the state tournament. So that was kind of the first chunk of gap years, and then maybe 77 after that title in 76 up to 80, and you guys had sons on the team. So let's maybe start with, go through those first 4 seasons from 70 to 74, just some of the players. Wasn't there a Reid on the team at that point, those early years, and what that was?
Both of them played.
Yeah.
But I think that, as a coach, you go to coaching to win. What do you want to do? You want to get the state tournament. That'd be your ultimate goal. And then, of course, if you get there, then you want to win. But I went to summer camps every summer, and clinics and so forth, and try to find out little things here to build your program, more interest in the school. And we were fortunate enough that we were the first team at Jefferson that started, and we won a conference championship. And we thought that was great. We want to build that up for your program, your youth. Then we were first to go to a state tournament and win a state championship. So those are all some goals that you have. Everybody probably has them. We were fortunate enough to have the players to be able to do that. So gap years are I'm going to get ahead of myself here, but gap years are years, but talent level isn't good enough. And I don't think that we had that kind of talent every year to be there, but we were fortunate enough to have coaching coming up that kids would work hard enough and maybe do as best that they possibly could be. And some of those kids were not super basketball players, but they worked very hard and worked together as a team. And that kind of made some of those gap years a little bit better.
I'm looking at the records from the 70-71 season, the first year. You guys were 11-8. The next season, 71-72, 17-5. The next year, 13-9. The next year, that's 11-9. So you guys were 11-9, 73-74. So you had winning teams. I mean, is that your memories of those first few seasons?
Well, we always say you wanted to win, and of course you had to win more than you lost, and that was 11-9. It wasn't much better, but it was certainly better than the alternative.
Right.
Not doing that, and you want to be average or better than average, and little things that you bring up your players, and whether they buy into it or not, I don't know, but they're important things to be thinking about if you're playing.
Yeah, Tommy Reid was on your first class. He was a senior that year, and of course he was a fantastic football player, but a good basketball player too. And so I think I wasn't coaching with Jack then, but I clearly was following the team and enjoying their success. And then you had Olson and Hoffman, two really fine players when they had nice records a year or so after that, and. Well, obviously, he never had a losing season, ever. And so that was significant. He had good kids. And like Jack said, they worked hard and prepared well and didn't quite have enough to win a championship right away, but it didn't take too long. They had one in 76, state championship, that is. So
I know you've told me the story talking about, was it the first Reid boy who you watched play football and hit a kid? And tell us that story. And this isn't football. He was playing football.
Well, yeah, I think the story goes that Lincoln or at Nebraska was scouting some kid from St. Louis Park as a good football player. And they had a film of the game when they played Jefferson. And Reid was playing safety, and he was really a linebacker, but he carried the ball as an I-back so much they didn't. Bruno didn't want him to play linebacker at that point. But holy man, he nailed some kid that was really a good player for St. Louis Park, and Nebraska said, "Who was that?" And so then they started recruiting Reid right away after that. So
Well, I remember when you first told me that story years ago. You said you thought he killed the kid. He hit him. See,
yeah,
he hit him so hard.
they took him out of the game, and the kid never came back. And Nebraska's only response was, "Holy man, who was the one that hit him?" That's the one we're interested in here. So, but he was a good basketball player too, and a good kid, great kid. Yeah.
And they were what what were the two Reid brothers were what classes?
Well, Tom was the first
Class, yeah.
First class, and John was maybe 2 years later.
A couple of years later, yeah, 2 or 3 years later.
And John wasn't as polished as Tom was, but he was a good rebounder. You know, he's going to be in there. He's got to mix it up a little bit. He's going to get you the board, play good defense. And, they both were very good athletes.
Throw some elbows.
Yeah.
How about the years? So you guys win the state championship in '76. Coach Lynch joins the crew in 76-77 season. How about those gap years right there? Where was the program at that time after the state championship, and from say '77 to say 1980 when Jeff and Mike were part of the program? How did those seasons go? I remember like Tom Stark and Kevin Davidson and Randy McIver and the Bailey brothers were both playing. What are your memories from those teams?
Well, just competitive kids, and we didn't have the talent level of some of the people that you mentioned, but I don't think we had a losing season there. They just worked very, very hard, do the best that they possibly could. We always had a saying, be the best that you can be, which is very typical today, you see it. But, and they got the best out of themselves. We didn't. We always tried to style our play, ball play, according to what our talent was.
Right.
And someone said we never averaged very well. We averaged 76 points one year. You had the kids that could rebound and get out and run with them. But then we just try to be realistic. You're not going to score a heck of a lot of points to just play. And especially when you play teams like what we played Minneapolis North in the state tournament in '82. They were #1 team in the state and averaging how many points. And we knew we couldn't handle them. So we just try to play a more deliberate style of play. And
Right.
they came into our, and helped us a little bit.
I tried to make them play our way, and that was, they didn't necessarily like that. We didn't want to play their way, they didn't want to play our way. So if we get ahead of them, we'll make them play our way, and that's what happened in the process too. Yeah, those years, my first years of coaching, typically we had great kids, and to me, if you got really good, hardworking, smart kids, you're going to have a good defensive team. And I think that's what Jack had all the time. We had good defensive teams and pressed and did whatever we needed to do to stop the other guy from scoring. Like when he mentioned about North in '82, that particular year, they were averaging 70-some points a game, #1 in the state, and we took them on and beat them. And again, made them play Jack's way, and that's they didn't like that. And they were really quick kids and good jumpers and that stuff. But we make them play your way, you're probably going to beat them if you get some talent at all. We had talent enough to do that, certainly.
How about some of the names from say the '77 through the '80s? I remember Mike Randall. Mike Randall and the Mont Bryan boys,
yeah.
And then Randy McIver was a transfer kid, I remember, and the Bailey boys. What do you guys remember about some of those kids?
Smart. That's my memory of. They're really smart kids.
Yeah, right. Steady. It was just, well, I mean, they were outstanding players, but not outstanding. They were like a Reid or somebody
Right.
that rings a bell, but just come to the gym, do their job every day.
Right.
You count on them.
He had another Crochell that came along right after, I think they're juniors
Todd
on the state.
Crochell.
Todd Crochell on the state championship team of '76, and he was a good athlete all the way around. And again, the thing that struck me so often about Jack's teams were that they were bright kids, and as I said, it always would be a lot of fun to track them down and see what they're all doing today. I'm sure they were successful with their brain as much as their athletic ability led up to conviction along the way on that part. But they're bright kids, And when you're bright kids, you can do a lot more. Jack could do a lot more and did.
And also, if you look around, we've had 3 Division I kids here. And the 3 that we've had, you can do a lot of things offensively that you'd like to do. Defensively, you can do a lot of things that you love to do, but you can't do because you don't have them. And just organizing how to approach seasons. As I look at some of these teams that go and recruit, my goodness, you know, you get some, we had Division I kids here that showed us other kids how to do things. I mean, you can talk about it, you can explain it, but they can go and show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's like getting a film and showing it.
You agree with that? I mean,
Oh, definitely, yeah. They again, the point is, with all those years of success and championships, there's 3 Division I kids that played during the years that Jack was coaching. And, you know, in other words, some of these other schools had a lot more than that. In other, to get them to play your way and to be successful, I think you better be bright, as I say they are, and you better be a hard-working crew, as Jack insisted, and they were. And I think, you know, they were talented enough. Maybe they weren't Division I, but they're talented enough to be good players, and that they were, whether they were Division I or not. So,
My first year of coaching, Jake will agree with me, you become very close to all the kids you coach, no matter what year it is, number 1 or 30 or maybe, and you like your kids, but sometimes and we believed in hard work, and sometimes let's take it a little bit easy. One year I did that, I had a fairly good team, and I lost a game, and we were not in condition, and we couldn't finish the game. So I kind of made a little promise to myself, and Jake bought in on that too, that we're going to be one of the better conditioned teams that we play. And I guess we proved that, and we went to state tournaments, or you go to tournaments that are 3 days in length, and we always finished the third day pretty strong.
never lost a game on the 3rd day.
That's amazing.
Of the years that I could think of, certainly in the state tournament that was true. Whether you're playing for the consolation, 3rd place, or state championship, never lost it on the 3rd day. And again, they were in condition. There's no doubt about that. And I used to run up and down the floor with them, just as kind of referee and that sort of thing. Boy, Jack wore me out as far as that goes. So we kept moving all the time.
But we always practiced Saturdays, and a lot of schools didn't and don't now, but and our Saturdays we usually kind of go over the scouting report a little bit, bring in, anybody had an injury or something, you could take a look at that. And then we'd try to, you guys think they were fun days, but we'd come back and have little shooting games and stuff like that. Try to, little competition among each other, some running drills and that too.
Your son Jeff just told me a couple days ago, his favorite practices, Jeff, right? Saturday morning practice. He loves Saturday morning practices.
I guess I have a question. Do they still practice on Saturday?
Jeff does it.
Yeah.
You know, Whitey Johnson, a good friend of mine, they never practiced Saturday up in Cooper and Armstrong. They were very successful, but that was just my philosophy, I guess.
Okay. Opposing players. What opposing players stand out to you guys? Which ones do you kind of remember as, you know, the Jim Petersons or whoever that you guys really kind of remember pretty clearly? Anybody in particular during the years?
There were a lot of them. I just can't.
Ironically, you mentioned Peterson, and he was obviously a very good high school player. But on that team was another kid, Anderson, a guard that was excellent too. So St. Louis Park was very strong those years, and I think some of those Duluth players that were very good too.
The Dudeks.
Yeah, the big guys that we ended up beating them in a state championship game in '82, but in '86 when you had won the state championship too, there's some very good athletes for Duluth East at that time, and or Central.
It was Central in
Central
86.
that year, yeah.
Yeah.
So they were good. That comes down in my memory.
Well, obviously, Kevin McHale, that's one of the opponents from '76, and players like that as well.
Well, I think to go back to that game, speaking with McHale, I think one of the reasons we won that ball game was conditioning.
Oh, really?
Well,
that was a real pressing team, right, in '76. You guys.
we come back and we had a point guard. Hutch was one, but a point guard, Brent Knight. He man-to-man pressed the whole ball game. Only guy. And the rest of them pressed too. There was Redica and McHale and a couple other Samoli, and they had some good kids.
Right.
And our kids were in good enough condition. They come back and they're behind and got ahead and stayed there.
Another question. Let's finish up with gap years. So, '88 after '87 state championship, to say the Vandegaard years. So from like '88 to '90. So that's like Joel Daniels, like I played with Joel, and Dave Larson, Don Cavage, Pete Johnson, up to Mike Vandegaard. You have many memories. They struggled in '88 after the '87 team, but does much stand out to you guys with those few teams in there?
Well, I don't like to say they weren't talented, because they were, but I mean, not as talented as previous teams we had.
Right.
And we couldn't expect that. You coached to try to get that, but we couldn't expect that type of performance from them. But once again, I look back over the years, you can never really fault kids for not really working hard to achieve what the goals that maybe we had set for them or they set for themselves.
Yeah, I think those gap years in there, they always had a pretty good team. Some years, whatever it was, you didn't have the opportunity to advance as far as that. So you ran into other very good teams, very talented teams in the process. And so, I think that year in '90, when we were in the state tournament that year, again, they got to be a little fortunate. In that first game, we ended up getting beat by Fergus Falls, and we thought we were definitely better than them. But Vandegaard sprained his ankle about 6 minutes into the game. And so he gutted it out and played. But
He's all Metro player.
yeah, he's the Metro Player of the Year. Had he been able to play, that's another potential state championship team in the process. But with him getting hurt, he didn't even play after that game. So it was, just a very. You got to be fortunate. You got to be lucky in a sense about injuries and that stuff. And it was just a fluky injury, but that happened, and so you got to adjust. And it was what I was really proud of that. Without Vandegaard, the next two games, we played two other teams that had kind of thundered us in scrimmages during the season. We ended up beating both of them. And again, I like to think of conditioning, as Jack said, they're in better shape than some of them, I think. And
Right.
Even though we didn't have our best player, without a question, we still were good enough to win the game without him. So
Consolation champs.